Yeah, equal time.
Here's a quote, by the way, on TCU quarterback Max Duggan and his recruiting, which was interesting, which I peeled off this weekend for today's show. Duggan, also a rare quarterback to stay put in college. The top 50 quarterbacks of the class of 2019, based on 247, 45 of the top 50 quarterbacks in that class have been in the transfer portal.
Yeah, and I think that's a trend it might get lesser over the years than that as NIL comes and you might stay and keep some money. But, I don't think that's a surprising statistic because of how things have gone. And if you're not starting by year 2, a lot of guys are just going to leave, especially at quarterback where it's not like you can be the second defensive end or cornerback or wide receiver or running back. You're going to go and try to strike while the iron is at least perceivably hot to you, even though you may not be ready to start somewhere else either. I will say this. Craig mentioned Georgia trying to create a chip on their shoulder. What does Kirby Smart say to them? Did you hear what they're saying about you? They're saying you're slightly different than last year's team. Yeah. Different, they're saying that you missed one guy. What do you say? Some of that, is false bravado. I think it was Brian Regan, the comedian, has a great bit about the doubters out there. Who doubted you? Who doubts LeBron James? Nobody, when it comes down to it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Georgia as a team, Stetson Bennett's talking specifically about himself. That's a different conversation because he's got plenty of doubters. But yeah, Georgia as a team does not have, we didn't believe in you or any of that. Bennett, on the other hand, that's another great story. I mean, he is a guy who can use that as a chip on his shoulder, the fact that many people didn't believe he'd be in this position or could be leading the charge like he is towards back-to-back national titles potentially. So I can see it from his point of view. But, yeah, the whole Georgia's being disrespected or whatever card, that's non-existent or not real life. TCU, on the other hand, I do think can motivate themselves with that. But, I mean, at this point, you just got to show up and play ball. You're weeks and weeks and weeks into the season at this point, months into it. You got one more to go. Forget the disrespect. Nobody's going to be disrespecting you after tonight, if you go win this game. So whatever it is you need to fuel and motivate you, it certainly worked for TCU. It certainly worked for Stetson Bennett. I can't wait to see this game. I know we got plenty more to talk about it, but it's fascinating from a lot of different angles, this matchup.
Yeah, so there's the quote I saw that from an article. It's a great article about Max Duggan and The Athletic about his recruitment and how many teams came after him. And he wasn't all that interested in staying around home in the state of Iowa, even though Campbell made a run, and obviously Iowa was involved, among others, in that area. And he ended up, in fact, I think he even actually visited Georgia along the way. Now, Sonny Dykes, what a year it's been. All of everything they've done since last year's team, the disappointment, the transition, Sonny Dykes takes over. He brings, of course, numerous people with him. Also, they brought in transfers, new strength and conditioning coach in Kaz Kazadi, and just changed everything up. And it's been a really damn good season, but it's also been one, not that there hasn't been stress and adversity and they haven't had that resiliency. Sure they have, but it's been one kind of free of drama. Sonny Dykes and all the extra work.
Well, I'll start. I mean, it's obviously been a big thing for us. Again, we've had, lots of practice opportunities. We've had, an additional 15 leading into the semifinal game that our players haven't had in the past. So you think about it, if you're a senior team and, if you're a senior player and you've been in a program that has consistently been the bowl games, and particularly New Year's Day bowl games or bowl games that occur later during the bowl game cycle, you look up and you go, okay, it's 15 practices for 4 years. That's 60 practices, okay? Well, that's 4 years of an additional spring training. And that's a big deal. That's a really big deal. And that goes back to what I talked about earlier in our program. We have 4 guys leading into this year that have participated in a bowl game. And so, we're a little behind in terms of our development and trying to catch up to some of the folks in front of us because we just haven't had that many practice opportunities. So what we've had to do is maximize them, and again, to our players' credit, they show up every day with a willingness to go to work, and it makes a difference. And we tried to sit down and say, okay, look, we were fortunate enough to get in the Big 12 championship game, which was an extra 5 practices. We're fortunate enough to get in the college football playoff, which is an extra 15 practices. We're fortunate enough to get into the national championship game now, which is an extra 5 practices. All those things add up. And so we sat down and we said, okay, what do we want to accomplish by this? Number one, win the last game. That was our goal. And number two, develop our team, and including our young players. And so it's been a great opportunity for some of our young players that have been on scout team that haven't had a chance really to get developed that much, to get developed. And so we go back and we check our work all the time. We have objectives that we want to accomplish, and then we go back and say, are we really doing this? Are we really giving those young guys an opportunity to shine and develop and compete and become the kind of players we want them to become? You know, and we're making sure that that's the case. And so far, I think that's happened. And I can't help but carry over, I think. We'll find out.
So Sonny Dykes, no doubt the coach of the year, the Eddie Robinson College Football Coach of the Year, had done a nice job at SMU. He, of course, was at Cal. He's been around. This is not his first rodeo, but this is his best rodeo. And he has touched all the buttons. He's a laid-back guy, and yet if you see him on the sideline, when he wants to fight for his team, whether it's with official or something else, he can go he's got it. And he's fighting for his team. He has been, and it's been a great story. Sonny Dykes never could have thought this would be the year they would have, just like last year. And again, not as good, although it depends on what happens tonight. But Baylor did not make it to the semifinals. Never could have thought that last year would be 12-2, Big 12 and Sugar Bowl champions. Sonny Dykes is trying to up that even another ante by trying to win the national championship.
Yeah, I don't know if I haven't fully fleshed out this theory yet, but I've talked about it, about how I think there is some changes going on with college football that will I don't think it's going to slow some dynasties down. Like sometimes you can just, run away and hide like Georgia is right now, like Alabama has for so long. But I do think that not being able to stash people for a long time, like being able to really hit things in the transfer portal, keeping a veteran team together a little bit longer because of NIL, like you might stay an extra year because you can make some money and not want to be a 4th-round NFL or 5th-round NFL draft pick and worry about making the team. So you can do that. So there's a little bit more opportunity for college football. So I do think you'll see more stories like Baylor from 2-7 in the COVID year to winning the Sugar Bowl and the Big 12 title and all that, to maybe not always like TCU, who had everything kind of bounce their way, but I do think that you will see teams be able to turn around quicker than, having to slowly build bricks over time into the building, because I think that there's a lot more mechanisms in place that allow you to do that.
Yeah, it's comparable to Baylor's quick jump from 2-7 to 12-2, but it's far beyond what they did last year. I mean, it's not even close that they're shooting way past whatever Baylor did last year. And whether or not they can keep it this way, not necessarily making the playoff every year, although with expansion, what are the expectations going to be? If Georgia misses an expanded playoff, that's going to be a big deal. Alabama missing a 4-teamer was a big deal. Imagine missing a 12-team playoff spot. That's going to be, massive. So we're probably going to see a lot of the same schools year in and year out. And whether or not TCU can be one of those schools that's in there regularly and be, the Texas school or the Big 12 school that's a regular representative, remains to be seen. He inherited a lot of great talent. A lot of good talent. He was able to bring a strength and conditioning coordinator over that, for example, if Baylor had hired him a few years ago, he would not have been able to do that. He would not have had Kaz Kazadi because Kaz was at Baylor previously. And so that wouldn't have been possible. So he was able to have Kaz come with him, and then fill in the holes, with a great defensive coordinator hire, some great recruiting evaluators and, behind the scenes folks and some great staffers and obviously some big time gets out of the portal. And then, quite frankly, a lot of luck, a lot of fortune, and, a quarterback who wasn't even the guy that you named and picked to be the starter who had a Heisman Trophy finalist type of run. So, a lot was fortunate. A lot was just well done, and a little bit of it was luck. I think you got to kind of have some of that to get to this point. You know, we talk about Baylor and all the close games they won last year and how they were on the other side of the coin this year. Well, that could very well be TCU next season. I mean, it very well could, because they could have lost about 4 or 5 games this year. Texas Tech, Baylor, I mean, last weekend, for example. And so, you know, we'll see. But I do think because of the portal, because of where they're located, because of, you know, the fact that they're kind of a cool brand, especially at this moment with, you know, Hypno-Toad and flashy uniforms and all of that, I think they've really, you know, found something pretty special. And whether they can hold on to that ball and run with it, you know, beyond this year, I think that they can. But, you know, that remains to be seen. But, shoot, you win a national championship tonight, and, I mean, the sky is the absolute freaking limit. And you know, Sonny Dykes would be a new legend born in Texas. You know, I know he's already, you know, kind of known all around these parts and has been for years and years, his father and all of that. But, I mean, to be a national champion, that puts you in a different category.
It puts you in a category that is